Hi, you don't want to miss this episode. This is our August update for Control and Compound. Let's find out what's going on in the world. Let's dig into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing today?
Hi, Darren. I am doing great. I can't believe we're at our August update. It's the middle of the summer already. And yeah, I'm excited to have a chat and do our update, but I still can't uh, we're into August.
I know, beautiful summer so far. Having a great summer, but wow, does it go quick?
Sure does, Darren. Let's dig into it.
All right, so let's start, Christina. Bank of Canada. What's happened in the past month? What can you update us on?
Well, there was some big news in July from the Bank of Canada. We didn't know if we'd see it, but there was another cut, right? So on July 24th, the Bank of Canada did cut the key interest rate by another 25 basis points to 4.5% now. So that was followed by that 25% cut back in June. So we've seen a big decrease in interest rates, which a lot of people were waiting for, and we're excited to hear about.
Yeah, obviously we're excited to see any cut in interest rates, but I really, I don't know if it's going to have that big of an impact because I was actually in Toronto last week and talking to some developers, and they're like, for the first time ever, tradespeople are calling us saying, "Do you have any work for us?" Like you talk to people in the housing development places in the major centers, we're in a recession now, and unless rates come down substantially and faster, we're gonna have a problem because basically people have stopped building. Tradespeople for the first time in years are looking for work. So I'm hopeful that the government of Canada will see this, and the Bank of Canada will see this, and we'll see a faster decrease in interest rates. Because if not, I'm worried about a more hard landing than a soft landing. But time will tell.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Darren. And for the longest time, they've been so focused on the inflation side of things, right? When they're talking about these, is there going to be a cut? Well, what did interest rates look like the previous months? And we did see an increase in inflation rates back in May to 2.9%, where they're really looking to get to, that 2%. So a lot of people thought, well, hey, maybe we won't see those cuts again in July because we saw those interest rate or that inflation have that bit of an uptick. However, in June, it did go down to 2.7%. And then, like you said, we started to see, the weakening labor market. We saw GDP like just stagnant. We're just not seeing things on the other side of it. So I think at this point, they're saying, okay, inflation is not exactly where we need it to be, but we need to do something. And so they're starting to do those rate cuts. So Macklem did indicate in the last update that we're probably going to see more cuts ahead for that exact reason, like you just mentioned. So they're thinking economists out there are kind of saying that we'll probably see 4% by the end of the year. Some others are being a little bit more aggressive and saying we might see 3.75%. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Now, there are a couple big reports that are coming out before our next announcement. So, the next announcement that will be made is going to be on September 4th. We do have our GDP numbers that are coming out the end of July. We're going to have our labor force survey numbers that are going to be published August 9th. And then inflation numbers for July are going to come out August 20th. So, there's going to be a slew of data that comes out that they're going to be looking at before the next announcement on September 4th. Now, typically we'd be looking at what's the Fed doing, but they're not really following our lead at all, right? The US had their GDP came out this last month, and they're actually up. They're doing quite well. And they're going to be discussing the end of this month too on what they're going to be doing with their cuts, but they're not really following the same trend as us over in Canada, which does bring us to our next section. But sorry,
Yeah.
comment there.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So we're seeing, that widening gap between Canada and the U.S. Um, well, productivity I beat up every month, but productivity. But now they're not cutting because their economy is doing better, their GDP's doing better. So typically, when that happens, what happens to the Canadian dollar?
Yeah, so we're down a bit. We're at 72 cents. The Canadian dollar's not doing great. It's definitely under pressure because of that widening gap between Canada and the US with those interest rates. And it's definitely favoring the US, right? The Canadian economy is very sluggish. We've talked about this in the comparison to the performance in the US, and our interest rate outlook versus theirs is very different. And now we're starting to see that with the Canadian dollar sitting at 72 cents compared to that 73 cents it was sitting around for the last couple months, which still isn't great, right? Even that,
Yeah.
72 cents, not ideal.
And then the stock market's actually, it's not very often on a monthly update I say this, but the Canadian market outperformed the US market last month. So again, 1 month, but the US market was up just about 1%, 15.5% year to date. The Canadian market was up 4% in the month. But they're up 8.5% year to date. So year to date, we're about half of what the U.S. market has done. But exciting few months ahead with the U.S. election. They're pending interest rate cuts or non-cuts, so it'll be exciting to see. And then on to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, we're not recommending Bitcoin. We're not Bitcoin experts. Information purposes only. Please don't sue us. Bitcoin's around 70,000. That's up 10-12% from last month, and 50% year to date. A couple interesting things. Donald Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference, which was a big deal in the Bitcoin world. And he didn't say let's create a reserve currency for the United States with Bitcoin, but he did say never sell your Bitcoin. And so why is Trump saying never sell your Bitcoin relevant, and why did we see a spike in the Bitcoin price? Well, the U.S. government actually owns 210,000 Bitcoins, so that's about 2.7% of all Bitcoins in the world. The U.S. government owns it, and that was basically from proceeds of crime when they started when they would arrest someone and take their Bitcoin and keep it. So Trump's saying he'll never sell the Bitcoin. So that could, a chunk of Bitcoin never being sold is a good thing if you want the price to go up. Kamala Harris, we don't really know her outlook on Bitcoin yet. We're hoping it'll be positive as well, but the Democrats kind of have a mixed message. Half them hate it, half them love it. So we don't really know what her stance is. And then Elon Musk came out last month and talked about the benefits of Bitcoin. He was kind of off crypto for a while, but he's kind of getting back on. So that was pretty cool in the Bitcoin news. Still, volatile thing, but I think long term it's going to be a fantastic thing to have a portion of your assets in there. What do we get next, Christina?
So diving into the real estate update. So with that interest rate cut, like we talked about, we did see some more activity in the month of June when it comes to home sales. So the national home sales climbed 3.7% month over month in June. They are predicting that we're going to see some more activity though out there for buyers, for sellers, maybe see some things move from the market that have been on the market for quite some time. Looking across Canada, though, it's going to be different in every market, as we've seen for a long time now. Home prices year over year in Ontario, BC, those places, not seeing a huge jump there. Actually, Ontario is a little bit lower. We've seen a bit of a decrease over year. But then there's some of those hot spots like Calgary, Edmonton, Alberta is a big one. Like price year over year is up 9%. New Brunswick, the price of a house year over year is up 10%. So we're still seeing a couple hot spots. So depending on where you're purchasing, it's going to be a different market out there. But across the country, we're definitely seeing an uptick. And they're saying, those interest rate cuts probably have a lot to do with that because people are getting back into that market. Something I wanted to chat about today is something that we're hearing a little rumble about again, and it's been talked about before, but we're hearing the topic come up again on the home equity tax. So another way for us to solve this housing crisis in Canada. Within the last few weeks, we heard that the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, were doing a government-funded think tank to discuss a variety of issues to solve, generational unfairness when it comes to houses and affordability in houses for the younger generation. And one of the things that they brought up was home equity tax. Now, Not that homeowners don't pay enough tax. We've got our property taxes, we got our carbon taxes. You do a new bill, don't forget about your GST, your HST taxes. We've got our fair share of taxes. So now they're talking about adding a tax on the equity in your home. So those Canadians that, saved inside of their homes, built up that equity, they had the good fortune of having that appreciation in their homes. They now want to tax that equity that they've built. So, removing that principal residence exemption that we've seen prior to, you don't pay tax on, that growth that you've seen in your home, that appreciation when you go to sell. Well, they want to, they're debating again, and this is not the first time, but they're debating again adding that. Now, my opinion on this is that this is, again, not going to solve our housing crisis. This is not the issue here. These Canadians have saved, and I would imagine what's going to end up happening is they're going to end up setting, maybe maybe not sell that house, right? They're going to refinance it instead. They're going to put a home equity line of credit on it. They're going to not sell. And right now, from the sounds of it, we do need houses to be on the market for individuals to purchase, and you're actually slowing those sales down. So it sounds like another tactic like we've seen in the past where they've targeted house flippers were the problem in 2023 when we saw the house flipping tax come into play. And then I remember when short-term renters, they were the problem. Those Airbnbs were really causing a housing crisis out there. So we put those bans and we put the rules in there. And now this sounds like, older people might be the problem. They worked too hard. They paid off their houses. They had some appreciation. And now that is the issue. It's not, it's not the fact that we don't have the builders, like you said, we don't have all, it's not the red tape. That can't be the issue. It's 100% that these Canadians have built equity in their home. So I think you can tell what my stance is on this and how I feel about it. Darren, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not the $160,000 per door some cities end up charging in permitting and zoning fees. It's clearly the old people that have worked hard their whole lives, paid off their mortgages, and to me, like, I just think this is a non-starter because income tax in Canada is based upon income. Like, it's all income tested, right? Pretty much, other than capital gains when you sell something. But if you don't sell something, it's income tested. So there's lots of older people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s now that have been in the same home for 20, 30, 40 years. So they may be in a $2 million home because they happen to live in Mississauga or, somewhere in Ontario. They bought a house for 100 and some $1,000s in the 80s, and now it's worth a couple $1,000,000. Well, they could have an income of 30 or 40 grand still living in that home because it's the family home. And now you're going to start taxing them, seniors, on a fixed income. Like, I don't see it. It's just so short-sighted. I can't see it ever coming to pass. And if it does, what, like, in the States, you pay tax on your house when you sell it, but you get to write off the interest on the mortgage. So if we're going to make some part of the housing taxable, are you going to allow us to write off the interest on the mortgage? And that creates a whole nother ball of wax. So
Well,
I
yeah, and they
think
have the
it's,
rollover in the US too, where if you go and purchase a new property, you're not going to pay that tax. So like there's and that will probably be a solid point now that you say it, that the US they get taxed on their houses. They won't bring up those two other things. They won't bring that
no.
up, but they will bring up the fact that they pay tax on their primary residence. So no, good point there too.
Well, that brings me into economic news. So let's talk about our federal government a little bit. Read a great article. Since 2015, the election of Trudeau, we've been increasing our civil servants, the federal government workers. Another 10,000 federal government workers hired in the past year. That's a 42% increase in federal government workers since 2015. So we've seen a 42%. Somehow we couldn't run with just the amount of people we had. We increased the civil servants by 42%. From a payroll perspective, it's increased almost 70% since 2015. So a 68% increase. Now, Christina, have you seen a 70% increase in the services provided by the federal government in the last 7-8 years? No.
No.
So that, and then, when we get into the Fraser Institute came out with their annual report on taxes and who pays taxes, and we'll talk more about this on another podcast. But I thought this was interesting. They broke it down by quintile. So in other words, top 20%, the next 20%, bottom 20%, etc. So they looked at family income. So if you look at family income to be in the top 20% in Canada, combined family income of 243,000. So if you make more than 243,000, you and your spouse, you're in the top 20%. So how much of the income tax paid does this top 20% pay versus some of the other quintiles? So the top 20% pays about 63% of overall income tax in Canada. Think of that, 63%. If we take the fourth quartile, which is 158,000 to 243 family income, they pay another 21%. So now we're talking, what's that, 83% on those top two quartiles. Family income 158 grand or above, paying 83% of the income tax. Now, some people look at this and go, yeah, but the top 20%, they're making all the money. So they're making 90% of the money. Well, that's actually not accurate too. They had the stats on that. That top 20 percentile that pays 63% of the overall income tax, they only make 46% of the overall income in Canada. So they make 46% of the income, but they pay 63% of the tax. So we have a very progressive tax system in Canada where the more you make, the more you pay. And the businesses, this whole misconception of business owners don't pay tax, wealthy people don't pay tax, it's just not accurate. It's not reflected in the stats. The wealthiest 20% quartile are paying 63% of the overall income tax and only making 46% of the income.
Numbers don't lie, right?
No, numbers don't lie. Anyway, so we've got a balloon federal civil servants, 70% more, and now we've got families making 158 grand or above, paying 83% of the tax in Canada.
So on to better news, Darren. So on to better. Let me put a positive spin on this. Let's bring it can we bring it back to industry? I got a good update in industry news that I want to share. So over the last couple months we saw some updates on the dividends, right? This happens every year, right around this time. We start getting the dividends in, the dividend announcements in from each of the insurance companies. And over the last couple updates, we did, we saw that Canada Life stayed the same at 5.5. We saw Sun Life remain the same at 6.25. Equitable had a bit of an increase. They went up to 6.4%. And then Manulife was the last to announce, and they are holding steady at that 6.35% for their dividend rate again this year. So that's all good news, right? We like to see that trend of going up. We like the 6.35, 6.4 dividends. That's not too shabby at all. And now we don't have to have another announcement until next year. So it's done. That's it. That's all there is, folks. The dividend's been announced.
Yeah, and actually, the other thing on that, Christina, is the policy loan rates for three of the companies of the four we use are related to the interest rates. So they've actually dropped now twice with the interest rates falling. So the policy loan rates are getting a little
Yep.
less expensive, which is nice. And then there was another really neat article for us insurance geeks here. The CRA tax court, the tax court ruled on a case where we always talk about if I buy a policy on my child, I can pass that policy to my child either in life or at death completely tax free. So the strategies you kind of give your kids a jump start on their first house, first business, first income property. You fund a policy, you have control over it, but eventually you can gift it to them with no tax implications. There was a case where a parent owned a policy on his son and his son's spouse joint. So it was a joint policy on the son and his wife. And the son unfortunately passed away, which didn't trigger a death benefit because it was a joint policy. And then the father wanted to pass it down to his son's widow. And they said, great. Or CRA looked at it and they came back and they said, we consider that daughter or the spouse of his son a child for tax purposes and for the insurance. So they reiterated, not only can you pass it down to your child, but you can pass it down to your child's spouse completely tax free. And again, not major news, but just every time they reiterate in the tax courts that yes, life insurance can be passed down tax free from one generation to the next. I take that as a huge win. So I thought that was some neat industry news. And then Limerick came out with a study on how many Canadians feel they're underinsured, and 4 in 10 Canadians feel they're underinsured. But then when they actually break it down to how many years before your family would be ruined financially if you were to die. So even the people that think they're okay, a lot of it is my family would be good for 1 year, 2 years. So when they actually did the math, only 16% of families would be okay for 5 years or more based upon the average amount of life insurance that people have. So again, Canadians, nothing new here. Underinsured. People don't appreciate how much money your family would need to replace your income. If you're making 100 grand and going to work in the next 30 years, that's $3 million you're going to bring in. So, the amount of life insurance people have is very low compared to the need for life insurance. Just it was an interesting study put out by LIMRA. Then what about next? CNC news, Christina?
Yeah, CNC news, which is exciting. So we are on the countdown now. It's getting like we're in August, and coming up is the Keyspire Investor Summit, which we are so excited to be a part of this year. So Keyspire is holding their annual summit. It's September 27th to 29th in Toronto, and they have announced the headliners for speakers on the main stage, and that is going to be, drum roll please, Shaquille O'Neal. So Shaq is going to be up there along with our very own Darren Mitchell is going to be on that main stage. So we've got Shaq, we've got Darren. Like, you don't want to miss this event. This is going to be an amazing event. They also have lots of workshops, specialty workshops that they're doing, investment opportunities. Like, I am so excited for the Keyspire event. I'm super
Yeah.
pumped that we're going to be a part of it this year.
This is going to be really big. This they're expecting crazy numbers for this. It's the first time ever. Every single Keyspire event the last number of years, the summits have been sold out, sold out, sold out. So they went to a bigger venue this year, and for the first time ever, they're allowing non-Keyspire members to go. So if you're a Keyspire member or a non-Keyspire member, this is the event you should attend this year. If it's one, this is going to be a big deal. It's going to be it's by the Toronto airport. There's going to be thousands of people there because it's going to be a huge, huge event.
Yeah, we're gonna throw the link down below. So if you're looking for tickets, we'll have the link below this episode for you to be able to click and make sure you're there, because we're gonna be there and we're excited to see everybody there too. Another announcement. So kind of a teaser to something that we've been working on, that we've been working really hard on actually the last few months, is Control and Compound is going to be launching a legacy building branch of our firm. So we're going to really start putting this branch is going to put a focus on one, building heritage instead of inheritance for our kids. So instead of just leaving that inheritance, we're going to have something there. And then we're also going to dig into the Rockefeller method and using trust to be able to pass down wealth for generations. So just a teaser on that. Stay tuned. I am going to be sharing our official launch date. There will be lots of information, podcasts, and everything coming out on it. But I'm super excited because we're like this close to launching. So it's coming very soon, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Cool. And then podcast, Christina. We've got what do we have last month, and then we'll talk about what we have sneak peek at coming month.
Yes. So last month we had a great group of podcasts, or a great number of podcasts that came out. One of my favorite ones, and one of the favorite ones that I liked recording, was what we would tell our younger selves. So providing financial advice to, ourselves if we were 19 again. That was a great one. We had 3 easy steps on implementing infinite banking, also a retire stress-free using your infinite banking policies. Then you had Shane on from XS Asset Management management, talking about the pros and cons of multifamily real estate investing, which was super interesting. So if you haven't caught that one, make sure you go back and take a listen. And then the last podcast that just came out last week was retirement in Canada versus the US. We have because there's so much content out there coming from the US, we wanted to kind of go through the differences and key concepts, key terms when it comes to the differences between the two. So we put a podcast together on that to share with you all.
And then this month, we get some exciting podcasts coming up. We have Patrick Francie from RAIN, so the Real Estate Investor Network. Really cool organization. Excited to have Patrick on the podcast this month. We've got one on tax and business owner kind of related stuff. We have a podcast on infinite banking. We're going to cover another infinite banking topic. And then we have another podcast that we haven't filmed yet, Christina, and we are actually looking for podcast ideas from the listeners. So we want to make sure we're providing as much value as we can. So if anyone out there has a podcast topic recommendation, please reach out to us and let us know. We're always love to hear what listeners want to hear. So that's it. August update. I hope everyone's having an awesome summer. We'll see you next month. Cheers.
Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.